Evening. This is the Brattleboro Select Board meeting for Thursday, April 25th, 2024. We just completed an executive session and no decisions were made. I'll bring this meeting to order and I will ask, John, has it been properly warned?
Yes, Liz, properly warned.
Great. I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes of April 16th.
I move that we approve the minutes of April 16th. Rather.
Thank you, Franz. All in favor of approving the minutes from April 16th, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's 4-0. Chair's remarks. I have none. Manager's comments?
Yes, I have a few tonight. I wanted to thank the Brattleboro Rotary Club for the spring cleanup and beautification of the Main Street Island over across in front of the Brooks Memorial Library, and also for the work bee that is scheduled for this weekend for repairs to the walls at the Rotary Outdoor Theater at Living Memorial Park, and also adding an access ramp and power washing and staining the deck. So appreciate that from the Rotary Club. Executive Assistant Jessica Stickler is working on a town committees fair for the last week of May on Wednesday, May 29th from 6 to 7 p.m. at the Central Fire Station. This is to help recruit interest in the various committee opportunities to make a difference in town that the Select Board will be filling in June. The hope is to have representatives from the various town committees as well as support staff in the room to talk about the work of the committees and interest people in serving on those. So, Library Director Star Electronica asked me to let you know that the Tool Cottage will be open for business again with gardening tools and tools for food preparation and food preservation, and available to borrow starting May 1st. And it is free. The e-bike program will also get rolling on Friday, May 3rd, and reservations for tools and e-bikes can be made through the library website at www.brookslibraryvt.org. Let's see, the solid waste survey is out. The town really wants to hear from people on their thoughts about changes to the trash, recycling, and compost program. This is all on brattleboro.gov, and also a print version of the solid waste survey is available at the Municipal Center at the Town Manager's Office, at the Circulation Desk at Brooks Memorial Library, and at the Brattleboro Senior Center. You can also do it electronically on the website. Completed surveys can be dropped off at any of those locations or just done electronically. The deadline for that is May 17th at noon. So if you want to weigh in on the trash program, check out that survey. Also on the town website is information on how to be on one of these solid waste focus groups that we talked about at the last meeting to help inform staff as we develop recommendations for the Select Board. I understand there's a lot of interest in participating in these focus groups, so check it out. And if how the town does trash disposals of interest to you, that would be a great way to participate and get involved. That's it tonight.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
All right. Are there Select Board members who have comments or committee reports? Yes.
I have a couple. Thank you, Liz. Part of it's just to chime in on what John was saying about the solid waste information process and the processing of the information once it comes in. I think this is a very big deal, and it looks to me like the community agrees, because I've been hearing a lot of spontaneous burbling up of opinion and concern, and with some intensity behind it. So I think that's great, and I hope people will go to the website, check it out, and provide feedback to us as to what they think. I'd actually even like to see what's on the website expanded a little bit to provide some of the background information of how we got where we are and what the relationships have been, and what direction it looks like things might head in. I feel like we know more, and Patrick has told us more than the website really has to offer at present. So I'd encourage us to expand it, and I'd certainly encourage the people in the community to participate in this process. The other thing I'm looking forward to is the community safety process that's going to get going Monday and Tuesday next week with Jim Baker from the governor's office organizing a film being shown at the Latches on Monday, and then a sort of conference, I guess, on Tuesday. And I hope people in the community are really paying attention to that, too. The takeoff point, I think, at least sort of, is the Community Safety Review Committee report from the end of 2020. Lots of good information in there. And to me, I see this as an opportunity to include more segments of the community than fully participated in that, pretty much by design, that was targeted to certain groups. So I think this is a chance for everybody to get on board, and we've identified it last year as one of our focuses, and I'm sure we'll continue to focus on that going forward. So dust off your Community Safety Committee report and read it for the third or fourth time, and then jump right in on that one, too. Thank you.
Thank you, Franz. Anyone else? Great. All right, public participation. So this is the opportunity for people of the public to discuss an item that is not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience here who would like to speak? Seeing none. Patrick, is there anyone online?
No.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. Let's discuss the consent agenda. John, you want to give us a thumbnail sketch?
Yep, there are 8 items on consent tonight. If you approve this consent agenda, you'll be conditionally approving the annual renewals of liquor licenses, outside consumption permits, tobacco licenses, and tobacco substitute endorsements for a list of 66 establishments that were approved last year and have been found to be in good standing this year by town departments and by building a positive community. You will be accepting and approving the annual financial plan for highways that is required by the state. You'll be certifying annual compliance with road and bridge standards for the town, also required by the state. You will be approving annual entertainment licenses for Hooker Dunham Theater and Gallery at 139 Main Street, the Vermont Earthworks WVEW at 46 Harmony Place, and the New England Center for Circus Arts at 10 Town Crier Drive. You will be approving a first and third class liquor license and an annual entertainment license for Plated Restaurant and Bar at 136 Main Street. And you will be ratifying appointment of Kevin Kennedy and John Couleur as town representatives to Southeastern Vermont Community Action at the request of the SEVCA Board of Directors.
So is there any item on the consent agenda that a select board member would like to pull from blanket consideration? Franz?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Liz. The SEVCA item, the 2 members being appointed to the board, I feel I don't really know enough about it. The process by which this came up, and also the 2 individuals, the little I know makes them sound perfectly qualified for this. But I think it just bears a little bit more information for us, for me anyway, than is provided thus far.
Fine. Well, I don't think that your questions get answered by moving this to the end of the meeting. So I'll take that back and place it on the agenda at another time. when people from SEVCA can be here to speak to it.
That is absolutely fine with me. I was going to suggest that myself, if there's no time pressure, which I didn't know if there was or there wasn't.
There's no time pressure. They're
Okay.
asking for you.
Yeah. According to their letter, the decision has been made and they've asked us to ratify it.
Okay, I mean, that's the kind of thing I need
Yeah.
information about.
Okay. All right, very good then. Let's have a motion about the consent agenda as modified. So it would be A through G. Anyone?
I'll move that we accept
Go
the
ahead.
consent agenda as modified.
Thank you. Okay, Peter has asked to accept the consent agenda as modified. All select board members in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
There you go, 4-0. Okay, old business, item 8, is the Select Board Housekeeping Rules of Procedure or Rules of Conduct. John, would you like to introduce that topic?
Sure, and this is just a follow-on from your first meeting in April, where you talked about a number of Select Board housekeeping matters, one of those including the rules of conduct, and we had a bunch of feedback which got incorporated. And also the suggestion was made in that meeting that we look at the Vermont League of Cities and Towns model template for Select Board rules of procedure. We did, and there were a lot of really potentially helpful things in there around the organization and addressing a number of the issues that were maybe not addressed as fully in your previous draft. So we redrafted that into this new document, Rules of Procedure document, which was attached in your board materials as attachment 1, as well as a red line comparison to your current rules of conduct as attachment 2. I'm happy to speak to any one of the any issue on these rules of procedure or anything that you want to discuss regarding it.
Gentlemen, comments? Other gentlemen besides Franz, or I'll go to Franz. I think he has quite a few items. Go ahead, Franz.
I have some, not as many as I had last time, though. And I sat down with John a few days ago and went over a lot of it, and he was able to, explain things to me and help me recognize that they're okay the way they are. We got into the weeds a little bit, and I came out of the weeds feeling good. But there's a few things, some of which I just want to kind of highlight or point out that I think are particularly important. One of them is on page 62 of 165, which is page 3 of this document. And I just want to point out at the beginning of the discussion of meetings, it says real clearly that all members, including the chair and vice chair of the select board, are entitled to timely access to information. And this is something that, having been vice chair last year and not being chair or vice chair this year, access to information is part of what just sort of came my way by virtue of being vice chair last year. And this year I'm finding that I need to take a more active role in sort of asking questions and trying to make sure I'm in the loop as much as possible. So that to me is one of the really critical parts of this document, saying that we're entitled to that access. And I don't think it's particularly controversial, but it is important to me. Another part that has come up is on the following page, where under the section entitled Order, paragraph C there says, Select Board members shall act as an example and treat colleagues and members of the public professionally and with respect and courtesy. And I've actually had a few people say to me that they feel sometimes our body language is less than meeting that standard, and that they would like us to be more cognizant, maybe just facial expression or something, but that, we're sort of sending out some kind of dismissive message at times. And so I said, that's important. We should be aware of that, and that's why I mentioned
You're not
it.
proposing to modify the language of this.
No, just to highlight things that I think are important.
Thank you.
There's, on the next page, hang on, let me find it. It's towards the bottom. And John, maybe you could help me out with this, because we did talk about it a little bit. In quasi-judicial public hearings, in paragraph E, it says that the select board or the presiding officer may limit the time for consideration of something. And it's not clear to me how the select board would do that in that meeting. Would there be a little vote of the select board within the quasi-judicial process to say,
Well,
we're going to
Franz,
do
no,
that?
there's this lovely little section here that says sole discretion.
Right, exactly, that's the problem.
I don't see that as a problem. I
Well-
see that as the chair's leadership.
But it says the select board or the presiding officer. If it just said the presiding officer, it would be very clear to me. But how the select board or the presiding officer would do that, that's what I don't understand. So,
And so the town attorney suggested that we could add the words, the chair of the select board to that, if that's what the board wants to do.
Well, I like that, but if you're saying the chair, because as the vice chair, I am currently presiding over the meeting, that I would need to have that authority as well. So it could be the select board chair or the presiding officer, if the presiding officer were defined as whoever's chairing the meeting. I think that would be appropriate.
Okay.
So leave it.
No, put the word chair after select board. The select board chair or the presiding officer.
and the select board chair may be the presiding officer, but may not be the presiding officer.
Right,
Yep.
and I think that that's clear enough.
I
Is it
think
clear
that's good
enough
enough.
for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Next.
The final paragraph on that same page, paragraph G, in a previous version, that was referred to, this is the part where, people have to behave themselves and not slander people, et cetera. So that is clearly under the quasi-judicial public hearings, but it also applies to all of our meetings. And I think it would be good, there was some language in a different version that sort of, that said, oh, and by the way, this also applies to regular meetings. And I liked having that in there, or this language could just be transplanted into the meeting section, which I think was section 5. But I would like it to be clear that those same standards apply not just to quasi-judicial public hearings, but also to all select board meetings. How to accomplish that, I'm not particularly fussy about, but I'd like to see that explicit.
That's fine, Franz. It seems the easiest thing to do would be to repeat it under Section 5 meetings.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, John?
Okay, so we will add G, 9G, and make that meetings 5R as well.
Okay, yeah, great, thank you. And I think my final thing is in section 11, requests of the town manager. It says, the chair of the select board, and in their absence, a duly identified designee, shall authorize or otherwise direct the town manager to investigate, prepare, sign, represent, etc. So the duly identified designee part is what is a little bit strange to me, because I would think in the absence of the chair that would fall to the vice chair. And I don't see who that duly designated or the duly identified designee would be other than the vice chair, and why.
Well, as the duly identified designee, I don't have a problem with it, but if you'd like to add the word vice chair.
Yeah, and the vice chair or other duly identified designee. I mean, I would think as the vice chair, you'd want that to be you and not somebody else if the situation arose. I mean,
Yes,
just
but
imagine that.
I don't have a problem with it because I understand it as the vice chair would be the duly identified designee, but if you'd like more clarity, I'm sure we could provide that for you.
We're just saying that there's no common sense built into these things.
Well, yes.
I mean, that's because
Right.
to me, what you're talking about is just straight common sense. The designee would be the vice chair.
Well,
Unless the vice chair also phoned in sick, and then I guess we would have to designate somebody.
Right.
So, I mean, it seems that you're suggesting is void of common sense.
I'm suggesting that the more clear it is, the less likely it would lead to some kind of disagreement later on. That's all.
I don't know. To me, I just feel like
Power
we're spinning
play?
tires on the ice.
Well, I don't know. Misunderstandings.
We'll add the word vice chair and everyone will be happy.
Yeah,
I won't be.
I would be.
Anything else, Ron?
No, that's it.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments? Are we ready to vote on this now, or do you want to see another version?
No, I'm fine voting on it.
Okay, so let's have a motion to approve this with the comments that have been made.
I move we approve these.
Okay, Richard has moved to accept, what are we calling it? The Select Board Rules of Procedure as amended. All Select Board members in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Thank you very much. All right. I don't even have to call the chief and the assistant chief to the table. They're here. So Chief Howard, you would like to discuss the Brattleboro Local Emergency Management Plan for 2024?
Sure. So you all saw that in your backup material, and each year we have to review it and update it with the Wyndham Regional Commission, and then once the Wyndham Regional Commission approves it, then it goes off to the Vermont Emergency Management Office and goes on file. Myself, who is the Emergency Management Coordinator, Peter Lynch, who's the Director, and Chuck and I, we review it, go through it to make sure any updates are done to it. Last year we did quite a extensive review and update to it. Made everything more flow much better than it did. So I'm here tonight for your approval to have the chair or vice chair sign it, and we'll send it to the Wyndham Regional Commission.
Thank you, Chief Howard. So I just have some initial questions, if I
Sure.
may. IC means Incident Command?
That's true.
Okay. And are there any lessons learned from COVID that have made its way into this report?
Last year when we updated it, we did not have a pandemic section into it. So yes, we updated it last year with a pandemic
Great.
section in it. And yes, we learned a lot from COVID.
Good. And are there changes in this document relative to the changes to our EMS delivery?
No, it's the same because last year we had the same ambulance service. We were doing the same. It's currently still the same. July 1st, it's going to be the same. Other than it'll be all Brattleboro Fire Department staff.
Great.
July 1st.
Thank you. Okay, gentlemen, do you have comments? Richard?
I have a question. Plan is incredibly thorough, and I read it over. And, I'm just curious if there was like a mass casualty event,
Yep.
would there be a role for rescue at all? Would you have to use some of their ambulances? And if so, I don't think I saw it in here, but how would that come?
They would, in an incident where there's a mass casualty incident and we need multiple ambulances, we will request that through our dispatch, and our dispatch will call Keene Mutual Aid Dispatch. And if we tell them we need 50 ambulances, they'll get us 50 ambulances. It may be from a long ways away, but it certainly would be rescuing as well.
And when you do training for events like that, are they included in the training?
We have in the past when we've had them, yes. It's been a while since we've had one, but yes, we try to involve everybody.
Franz?
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads into one of my questions, which is what are your plans for training for the incident management system? And things are kind of divided up. Well, at one point it refers to the Emergency Operations Center and Incident Command as separate, but maybe part of that. Could you just give us a little bit of a picture of how those two things are related?
Yep.
And then also what kind of training would take place for maybe all those people, but certainly for the Incident Command System?
So the Emergency Operations Center is where the fire chief, the police chief, the public works director, somebody from the hospital, the town manager's office, all those people will be in a room planning for essentially future in the event. So in an event, say a flooding like Irene, Chief Picasso was in the Emergency Operations Center. Assistant Chief Lynch was out actually running the incident. So I would consider him being the incident commander, and he would report back to the Emergency Operations Center, telling them, this is what's going on, this is what we look like, this is what we foresee in the next 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. You need to start, the Emergency Operations Center needs to start planning, and they can go into the Emergency Operations Plan. And you'll see in there's different, for instance, there's contractors in there with construction equipment and stuff. So if we say to them, well, we're gonna need excavators and stuff, they'll go into that plan and say, okay, they have these places listed as where we can get it from, and they'll start lining that up for us. Whereas the boots on the ground are out handling what's happening right then and now, and if it were happen today, it would be Chuck out there that would be doing that, and I would be back in the Emergency Operations Center working. There would be a member or two from the Selectboard there. The incident command system to myself and our staff is second nature, because we use it on every call we go on. So it's second nature to us. The police department is pretty similar. They set up an incident action. And that's the other thing is, like, when there's a ski jump or the 4th of July parade or a big event like that occurs in town, either the police department or the fire department does an incident action plan. So people are identified, who's what's, in the events an emergency happens during the parade or at the park for the fireworks. So that's all predetermined prior to the event by the different departments, the police department, fire department, public works. That's all predetermined prior to all that. So that's a good way for us to get into the rhythm of how an operation would work.
So, in my experience, when I used to have gainful employment, I'd be, as the director of the emergency department at the hospital and director of EMS, medical director of EMS, I'd be part of that whole mix. But I wasn't calling the shots.
Right.
And, it was the chief of the fire department over in Keene who was the incident commander certainly for any big incident, not for a routine ambulance call. So are the lines of authority all clearly laid out here?
Yes.
And, because it seemed to me there was some overlap between the incident commander and the emergency operations center, but how does that play out? How does that relationship work?
Again, the incident commander is running the incident, and he's going to run the incident.
So he's really in charge, or she is really in charge.
We're basically the emergency operations center is support to the incident commander.
Got it. Okay. And then how about the training? I remember going out to the Keene Airport and, having a pretend emergency with everybody all bandaged up in makeup and all that kind of stuff.
We haven't had one since that word COVID.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we used to have monthly meetings at the hospital pre-COVID, that we'd go in and have monthly meetings and get all the players at the table and just talk about different types of things that could happen and occur. We just need to get back into that rhythm again.
And do you have plans, or you're baking some plans?
Yep.
Okay. Well, great.
Yeah.
Can I watch?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. Also, could you tell us a little bit about the single versus unified incident command? How is that decided? And then if it goes from single to unified, is there a transfer of authority at some point along the way? Or how's all that work?
A single command is like, say we have a house fire in town. It's going to be a single command. It'll be either myself, Chuck, or if Chuck and I aren't around, it'll be the officer in charge. That's the incident commander. And they'll be the sole incident commander of that incident. God forbid if we ever had a school shooting or something like that, then it would be a unified command. The police chief or the assistant police chief would be the incident commander because that is a police incident. So, in a lot more likelihood, I would be at the command post with either Norma or Jeremy. I would be assisting them, but they're the incident commander, but it's a unified command because there's multiple agencies coming in. So they would be the incident commander, but we would have representatives from whatever school was there. The school superintendent most likely would be at the command post. That's what we mean by unified command. You got multiple people there, 4 or 5 that are working together to come up with a goal or an outcome quickly to resolve the situation. So that's what they mean by unified. And a single role is, like I said, we use every day on every call we go on. We use.
But there's still one incident commander under the unified system.
Absolutely.
Does that ever change if the nature of the events change? It could switch from police to fire or something like that? It could?
Yeah.
Okay. That's it.
Thank
for
you.
me.
Peter?
Good.
Okay, are there members of the public who would like to speak about the emergency management plan? Patrick, is there anyone online who would like to speak? All right. Then, once again, let me thank you, both Chuck and Lenny. Oh, yeah, we need a motion. But I'm in the middle of thanking you, so let me thank you for such a thorough and important report. So, let's see. How about a motion?
I'll motion to adopt the 2024 Brattleboro Local Emergency Management Plan for the 2024 and to authorize the town manager to certify the town's LEMP has been duly adopted by the board.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Peter has moved to adopt the 2024 Brattleboro Local Emergency Management Plan, the LEMP, for 2024, and to authorize the town manager to certify that the town's LEMP has been duly adopted by the board. All select board members in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Thank you very much. Now, you guys are sticking around
But wait, there's more.
They'll have us.
because there's more, as Peter just said. quarterly fire department report.
Okay, I just want to give a quick overview of how things are going, and then I'll let Chuck talk to the overall numbers and reports, because this is his work, and I thank him for it. Overall, we're doing very well. July 1st, obviously, is just about 2 months away. We currently have all the new positions but 2 that are filled. Today we had some screening interviews with some new applicants, and we have invited a couple of them to move on in the process. I'm also excited to say that this week we've hired 2 single role paramedics, which we're very excited about. This week one of them started, and next week the other one starts. They're going to be going through some training before they're set free out into to start doing calls. And we're very excited and happy with that. And I can't thank Superintendent Fritz Billy. He's been astronomical on helping us get things moving forward. His knowledge and the people that he knows across the country. When I come up with a question, or if Chuck comes up with a question, if he doesn't know it, he knows where to get the answer, and that's extremely helpful. And staff is excited and nervous at the same time, and likely so. If they weren't nervous, I'd be nervous that they're not nervous. So there's that. We've developed, through many meetings and discussions with staff and the officers, we've developed a response model that we've developed for this new process. And May 1st, we're gonna start that. Even though with Golden Cross here, we've met with Golden Cross, we explained to them how we want it to work. They've been great on saying, we're here to help you. So we're gonna start doing that May 1st to help us, give us 2 months to see what flaws are in that response model and what adjustments we need to make, so we are even that much further ahead July 1st. So I'm very pleased with our progress and looking forward to rolling it out.
Thank you. Assistant Chief?
In terms of the quarterly fire and EMS report, we've had 2 fires, working building fires since the start of the year, one on Gulf Road and one on Oak Street. EMS superintendent, as the chief just mentioned, hit the ground running, did a joint training with Director of Emergency Services at Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, Taylor Emery, to organize a regional training for the area. The training covered various case reviews and different incidents. Currently, the billing information from Golden Cross, they've billed out $788,656.20 with a revenue of $694,170.42. With a side-by-side comparison of data from last year to this year, we are 75% of the way through the year, and we are running 80% of last year's total, so we are up from last year's numbers. Just a data breakdown. Since July 1, we've run 2,424 calls. Our average time to scene is 4 minutes and 27 seconds, but under the 90th percentile emergent response, that's 6 minutes and 53 seconds. The max time to scene was 39 minutes. The average time to dispatch to cleared is 27 minutes and 1 second. We transported 1,604 patients, did not transport 820 patients. The need for 2 ambulances was 427 times. The need for 3 ambulances was 38. The need for mutual aid was once. The need for mutual aid to cover the town of Brattleboro was 5 times. Other breakdown data, as you see moving down forward, general illness still seems to be the outlier call. That is a breakdown. We're working on getting that a more accurate representation of what that general illness is. So we're working with dispatch so that that number is more accurately reflected in this chart that you see here. The EMS transition in terms of the budget breakdown and what we've spent is listed below, but currently to date, we've spent $485,456.17. Fire prevention update, that seems to be running pretty smooth. I'd like to remind everybody that if you haven't signed up for Community Connect or don't know what Community Connect is, visit our website. It's a great opportunity for businesses and private residents to see and to put in information that will allow us to more quickly mitigate an emergency. Some of our staff news is Office Manager Kristen Martin just recently finished her advanced EMT course and is now certified AMT. Superintendent Billy Frisk completed a 1-week training for field training evaluations for EMS. And then firefighter Gabriel Legensberger and firefighter Jared Vonderhorst became members of the State Vermont Hazardous Material Team.
Great. Thank you very much. I didn't know about this Community Connect, so I'm glad to hear about it. And
It's a very good tool for us. If you go in and fill it out, you can put a lot of information about your home, where things are. So in the event that we do go there for an emergency, it's extremely helpful for us because in our software program, if say we go to your house and you filled all that out, your address comes up and all that information's right there for the officer to see when he's responding to your house.
great.
One of the first questions that people always ask with Community Connect is it secure, is it safe? It uses the same software that banks use to secure that information. So any information that you put on there can only be utilized at an emergency scene while we're responding to your incident.
Oh, that's helpful. Thank you. Are you working with Seth to get this information townwide?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Gentlemen, do we have a comment? Richard?
I'm curious, that when the new system starts for the town taking over, will you be billing insurance companies?
Yes.
And
We have a billing agency, Richard, that we've contracted with, and they'll do our billing. And then whether we want to report weekly, monthly, quarterly, they'll give us a report on all that.
And I'm just curious, will people be expected to pay a bill if they don't have insurance too?
It's all in. Prior to you getting on the board, we approved a billing policy, and in that billing policy, it lays out that I think we'll bill you like 7 times, and then the town will decide whether we're going to write it off or not.
I'll look into that.
Can get you a copy of it.
Peter?
Yeah, just again on the mutual aid thing, because sometimes that confuses me.
Sure.
Mutual aid can just mean that you've made the call, but nobody's actually shown up. Correct?
That's true.
The 5 times most likely is the time we had fires.
Okay.
So we have a mutual aid ambulance come and they stand by at the station, but they don't actually go on it.
I know. I think most people, when they think of mutual aid being called, that means something has been deployed from another place, put in your barracks, for lack of a better word.
And the chief's 100% right. So that when we define that in this chart, that mutual aid to cover is exactly that. That ambulance from another town or township is sitting in our fire station. The need for mutual aid is they're actually being used. So in this time, it's one time, and that was at a fire where Cheshire County Ambulance transported a patient.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I get a little confused. I just want one more question, because I'm also just learning about Community Connect. So, like, I can put it in there where I hide my keys. You can just get in there? Okay. Good to know. I'll give you the combination, too.
Yep.
All right.
Franz?
I don't think I have any comments on this section.
All right.
Sorry.
So, and just one more question. You would consider the morale of the department is very good?
Yes. We have a very young group, but we're very, very eager, the atmosphere is very good. Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Well, oh, right. Okay, so how about a motion? Gentlemen?
I'll motion to.
Liz,
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, let's talk, I do the motion, and then we'll have a discussion.
I'll motion to accept the fire/EMS report as presented.
Great. Kate, you have a comment?
Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. First, I'll do a commercial for Community Connect. I think I was one of the first people to sign up.
yeah, you were.
And you can put your pictures of your pets in
Yeah.
there, too.
Yeah.
So they know what they're looking for when they go in. So that's a good commercial for that. I just have one thing, and I know I get up and ask this a lot, and Dick does. Now that starting July 1st, it's actually the town going to be doing the billing, or through our billing company, that perhaps you can figure out the way to actually what is billed and what has actually come in from those invoices being set up. Because right now it looks like everything's okay, but we know there's a lag. So if you can figure out a way, since we're doing it, we're starting fresh, is for us to know, like 500,000 was billed, but only 100,000 of that 500,000 has come in. So there's a way to do it, because anybody who knows QuickBooks, you can push a button, do an aging report. I also recognize, because this has come up, that there's like $350,000 of formerly known as ARPA money. It's not ARPA money anymore. It's taxpayer dollars that's going to front some of these bills. But that should not impact in any way knowing that a bill went out and if that bill has been paid. So I'm really hoping there are a lot of smart people can figure out how to report how those taxpayer dollars, how that billing is coming in, so we know how much taxpayer dollars we're going to have to put in, if I'm making sense, because we get up and talk about this at every meeting.
Great, Kate. Thanks for your comments.
Could I ask Kate a question?
Sure.
Just, Kate, I wonder it seems to me that you're recommending that we separate out money that's coming in because it was billed before July 1st from money that comes in because it was billed after July 1st. Would that accomplish what you're looking for?
Yeah, as long as we know that, because right now it's what you're saying is what's happening. Things that have been billed, we don't know when it's come in, and it's all folding over in a way that makes it look like what we're billing is actually equals what's coming in, and that's not the way it is. And I think I don't have to get up and explain because somebody else can, but
okay,
that's
fine.
what I'm just saying. What's happening now is what is being billed and what is being put towards that as income they're not the same. You're not using the same people and their invoices that are coming in. But
Fine, Kate. Thank you. Chief Howard, do you want to address that at all?
No, Kim shook her head yes, so she's on.
Okay. Very good. All right. Let the record show that Kim Frost has nodded her head.
Chuck wasn't rude to get up. We have a fire on here.
I could tell. Yes. So we have a motion on the floor. Shall we vote on it? Or are there people anyone else? David, do you want to speak to this? All right, very good. All select board members in favor of approving the quarterly fire EMS report, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Thank you very much. All right. But Lenny, you're still here.
Yes.
Would you like to present the Brattleboro Fire Department response policy?
Yes. So back when we did the AP Triton, part of one of the big things that Rich recommended that we do is come up with a response policy for the board to adopt. So with that, we took all the information that we could gather from all of our calls, and we actually went to the PSAP Center in Westminster to understand how they process calls, what their, how long it takes them to process a call and then turn it over to our dispatch. So it's very confusing to us, and I'm sure it's very confusing to the public, because they think they call 911 and they're calling our dispatch center, and they're not. You call 911 and you're more than likely getting transferred to the PSAP in Westminster. There's 2 PSAPs in the state.
What does PSAP stand for?
Public Safety Answering. They answer the emergency 911 calls. There's Westminster and there's Williston. And if either of those 2 are busy or backed up, then the dispatch center in Hartford will pick up the overflow from the 911s. But the majority of our calls go to the Westminster answering. So they answer it, and they get, they need to process the call and try to process the call within 60 seconds, and then they have another minute and 30 seconds to pass it on to our dispatch. Then we get toned to go to the call. So when we learn, and from Chuck's numbers from our report, the average response time of 90th percentile is 6 minutes and 53 seconds. That's once we've gotten the tone and we're out the door going. That's our average, or the 90th percentile time emergent response. So with that, we came up with the 6 minutes and 30 seconds for us to once we've received the call at Central Station or Station 2 to get to the call. It's a little, that 6 minutes and 30 seconds is a little less than what we're doing now, but I think it's a good goal for us to reach, and I think it's attainable for us to reach. So that's what we're asking you folks to adopt tonight. We certainly will be back in a year to review how we've been doing, how we did for the year, and if we need to make any changes to it, we can make changes to it. And that's how we've gotten to where we are. The AP Triton, they did a survey when they did the report, and 71.49% want us on scene in 4 to 6 minutes, and 28.51% want us on scene in 8 to 10 minutes. That was the survey they did when they came and did their study. I'm happy to answer questions that you may have.
Thank you, Chief Howard. Gentlemen, you have comments?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Okay. Franz, please begin.
Thank you, Liz. My perspective on this is, it comes probably from the American Heart Association, that what we really want to do is someone who's in an unstable heart rhythm due to a heart attack or some other event, you want to get the pads on them and defibrillate them, ideally within 4 minutes, but definitely within 8 minutes. So with this, with your 90% figures, we wouldn't really do that in those, certainly in anything that went over the 90%. But also in some of the things that were under the limit, we still wouldn't be getting the life-saving care there as fast as we might like. What that makes me want to see is not so much what our outer limits should be, but where we're actually falling within the inner limits. You know, in the part where it's good, where it's within the 90th percentile, I still want to know how long, you know, sort of the mean, median, standard deviation, the typical statistical reports of how we're performing in our good section, because there's still some variability within those time parameters as to how effective the treatment is going to be, certainly in some cases of medical emergency or even traumatic events.
Right.
That there could still be an important distinction within the section that we're saying, oh, that's okay. And we need to gear our efforts and our improvement efforts to getting to the point where we're really providing the best care we can as quickly as possible. So I'd like to see the data reporting take place in a way that gives us that information as well. And there'd be a number of different ways of doing that, whether it's scatter plots or, summary statistics and stuff like that. So, I'd like to see that happening. I'd even like to maybe participate in it a little bit because I do have the statistical and public health background to at least be annoying, if not actually helpful.
I know a guy that we hired to be very good at that. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's going to be so much easier when it's just us doing it, because right now Golden Cross is doing it, and it goes into their reporting database, so it's not easy for us to get that data out of their reporting. Starting July 1st, we can get all the data we want.
Excellent. So anyway, that's my perspective on it,
Yep.
that the more information we get, as long as it's presented really clearly,
Yep.
then that'll really help us assess our success.
Sure.
Thank you.
Franz, Richard? Franz's comment prompted a question about the information that we can provide to you online. Would that include health conditions?
Anything, yes. Any type of emergency.
So that you would know immediately whether someone has a heart condition and you could...
If you have a medication list and you want to put it on that's going to be helpful to, like what Franz just said, when our providers get there, they're going to have your medication list, because sometimes you can't talk to us.
Right. Okay. Peter, did you have
No,
anything?
I'm good.
Okay. Are there members of the public who would like to address this issue? Oscar, that was a wave. That's not you.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Patrick?
Careful if you
Anybody
go to
else?
an auction.
Yeah. Okay, gentlemen, someone want to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a
Franz,
motion.
please, yes.
And I move that the Select Board adopt the response time standard of the Brattleboro Fire Department as presented.
Thank you, Franz. Franz has moved to adopt the fire department's proposed response time policy as presented. All Select Board members in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
There you go, 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to go see how my troops are doing.
Great, thank you.
It says in here that the southern border of
Kim?
the town is Guilford. It's Guilford and Vernon out.
Hi.
Why?
Okay, so Finance Director Kimberly Frost.
There you go. Kim.
You're here to discuss the quarterly financial report through quarter 3.
Correct. So that will be July 1 through March 31.
Great. Please
So-
tell us.
Okay. So you have in your folders the report. I will give you a breakdown of the highlights. So we're 75% through the year as of March 31st. When we prorate all our yearly expenses within each fund, the general fund is at 75%, so that means we are at budget. The utility fund is at 73.5% of budget, and parking fund is at 71%. So that means, the general fund is right at the line. So we have to really pay attention to that because we're right at budget at the third quarter. So that means that this quarter, we're going to have to pay a lot of attention to what's happening because we don't want to go over budget. So just going through some of the major things in this report, we don't have the next quarter of the sales and rooms and meals tax yet. That will come in May. So that will add to our revenues here. Our staffing expenditures remain consistently well. We're at 74% through 75% of the year. Considering that's our biggest expense, that's a good thing. We do have some departments that are over budget, and As I discussed in last budget, we're going to be consistently over budget, like in the town manager's office and finance and HR. For those one-time things, we had, some staff overlay on in finance with some retirements. We had a purchase of a copier in the town manager's office. And HR has, already exceeded their budget for advertising for open positions. That's not going to stop, as, we're fluid with that. That's going to be an expense that's going to keep coming. This quarter, police and fire are both at their budgets, so we anticipate that they're going to go over budget. The police department does have some unbudgeted expenses. They have the security that was unbudgeted, and that's a big expense. And fire has had some unbudgeted truck maintenance expenses. Sorry. And they were, they need to be done. The trucks have had some, wear and tear through the snow that need to be fixed. I did mention in here about some cost estimates for the ladder truck. We did put in an insurance claim, so we will not have to pay for that. So that's really good news for quarter four. So Len and Chuck did, do their due diligence there. These fire truck expenses are not looking like they're going to go into like FY26. This is like a one-time thing that it's like everything's happening at once. They do have a utility. They do have a plan to keep maintenance going forward on the trucks. The utility fund is basically in the same position that it was. Our billing is, you're going to see that the revenues look low. We billed. Collections will start again in May, so you won't see any added revenue there. But next report you will. The expenses are trending on pace. We did have a couple of things that went over budget. Hydrant and meters, there actually was like lots of hydrants hit this winter with snow plows and cars that had to be replaced. And we did have lots of gravel that we had to buy. There was widespread erosion on the streets, and so they had to replace a lot of gravel. So that was the couple of things that were over budget within the utility fund, but basically we're not anticipating the utility fund any big expenses. We feel like we will run on target there for the year end. Going to the parking fund, the meter revenue and the permit revenue is low as of right now. We are seeing that it's trending that way. We did close off the top floor of the parking garage, so that could impact permits. But the parking fund, we are bringing the budget to you within, a month. We will be bringing all, whatever options to discuss about the issue with the low revenue that's in the parking fund. Their expenses are trending a little bit low, and that we are not anticipating any larger expenses within this fund. So I think that we will be okay at the end of the year here with the expenses. I think here it's going to be the revenue side that we're going to have to pay attention to. The red flags, the thing that we were discussing was the fire truck expenses that are unbudgeted that we're going to have to deal with. We do have some cost savings in other department expenses. We also have seen an increase of 42% in miscellaneous revenue, which will help absorb some of these costs. We also had a light winter, so our, our salt expense and some other plowing expenses are lower, which are snow removal. We did see some savings there, so that will help absorb some of the overages that we're seeing. I do have the other fund balances and grants and loans. Did you want me to go through all of that, or did you want to ask these questions first and then I can go in to the revolving loan fund questions that you guys had last quarter, or I could just keep going?
Let's see if there's any questions thus far.
Sure.
Okay. Gentlemen, you have questions on the financial report?
Just one question. So it was a lighter winter for expenditures. Does the town buy salt and sand ahead of time and store it up, or do they buy it as needed, or how does that work?
I know we buy sand ahead of time. I think that they always have salt, but I think if they're seeing it's low, that's when they start to replenish it. So I don't think they're buying salt as it snows. They are keeping some, but I don't know exactly the proportion.
Yeah, just curious to wonder if maybe they'll save a little money next year if they had some left over.
I'm sure that's quite possible.
Yep, totally.
Anything else, Richard?
No.
Peter?
No.
Franz?
The changes to the parking fund would be changes in the actual charges for parking, not the structure of the parking areas. I mean, I'm just wondering, this is a financial report, not a here's where you can park in town report.
Correct.
So when you say, you're going to bring us the parking budget and that might have changes in the system, you're really talking about changes in
Rates.
the rates for the meters
Correct.
and the other spots. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a couple questions.
Okay.
It says here that a few of the town's department expenses are close to or over budget. Besides police and fire, are there any that you want to bring up?
Yeah, so those were the ones that I did speak about. So it's town managers, finance, and HR. Town manager was the one-time expense for the copier. Finance, we had an extra staff person for a few months while we were dealing with the two long-term retirements. And HR is having the advertising expense that is basically revolving.
I think you said that you were trying to reallocate those expenses to each department where the things were advertised for?
Yeah, so one of the expenses that's in HR is personnel management expense, which sometimes, for instance, when we go to bond, we have to use bond counsel to write letters to say that we have everything in order to be able to apply for this bond. Those historically have gone to personal management expense. I don't think that they should go to personnel management expense. I don't think they belong in HR. So as HR was going over budget, and we did some recognizance, we saw this happening. So that's something that we'll be working on next quarter to kind of go through a couple of those lines and see. HR is like it's a newly developing budget because the town really never had HR. So it was like lines are in there that maybe things from town manager's office, because it was historically HR was always in town manager's office. So I think that they've just stayed there and no one's really done like a clear, analysis of what's going in there. So that's something that we're going to take a look at next quarter and kind of see if we could reallocate some of those expenses.
I'm glad you're on the case.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. Does the board want to hear detail about fund balances? Speak now, forever hold your peace. Okay, why don't we ask the public if they have questions?
Sure.
I think Oscar's eager to ask us some questions. So Oscar, will you join us at the microphone?
Hi, just a couple questions.
Wait. Name, please.
Oscar Heller,
Brattleboro.
District 9. Yeah, okay. Do we have a sense for the advertising fees, what the currently, like the spread of the departments for what we're advertising for? Because it sounds like that was an unexpected expense.
I don't think it was unexpected. I think it was probably just, under budgeted. I don't think it was, I think that's a rolling kind of expense, right? Like I don't know, but per department, I don't know that answer.
Okay. And then my other question was just to clarify, when you say something, we're through 3/4 out of 4. If you say a department is at budget now, do you mean it is on pace for its budget through 3/4, or that it's at its yearly budget after only 3/4 have passed?
So if I was talking about the fire and police, they're at budget, so they're at 100% of their budget.
For the whole fiscal year?
For the whole fiscal year. So
Okay.
that means they're going to go over budget come the fourth quarter with
Okay.
any expenses that they have.
And the general fund as a whole was also in that category, right?
So the general fund is right at budget, which is at the 75% mark. So they're not over
Okay.
budget and they're not under budget. They're right at budget.
Okay, now I think maybe I'm confused again.
Okay.
So when you say at budget, you mean at budget, given that it's only been 3/4. So there is still one more quarter of expenses, and that's what we expect.
Right. They have
And
one.
fire and police are like slightly over their 3/4 worth of budget, or were you saying that they are over their year's worth of budget in only 3/4?
They're at their year's budget, fire and police, and the general fund is at their 3/4
Okay.
mark, right on budget.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'll be more clear about that next time.
All right, Kate, you have a comment?
Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. I kind of want to follow up on Oscar. I had this question before, but now, it seems as though, what's the plan so that we're at budget at the end of the year? Because it sounds like if the police and fire are over and these other ones are
Well,
we're at 75% with everybody else, there's going to be, if this trend continues, we're going to go over budget at the end of the year. So I'm just wondering, you've only got 2 months left. What's the plan if there's not enough money?
well, decisions have been made here to have, for example, security in town and at the parking garage. And decisions have been made here since the budget was passed. So in the short term, that's the reason. What will happen with it? Let me start by asking John.
We will be managing the expenditures in the fourth quarter to make sure that we come in at 100% and not over budget. So
Yeah. And we've been, we did just start where we're going to be bringing budgets to our weekly department head meetings and kind of, getting all the department heads to be really aware that we're at, that we're really close, and that, if they're going to see something, if they see that something is going to be there, an expense that they weren't expecting, that they come and talk to us about it. And, if it's something that we can hold off on, if it's something that we do have the room for, that we have a conversation about it.
And I think it's interesting, Kim, that, your report, for example, talks about fire truck, but it's so early in the process that now you can report that the insurance will cover that. So these things are in flux, and this is what we'll be working on in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and that's how it is all the time, right? So we still do have a quarter to go. It doesn't mean that we're going to spend every single dollar of that quarter of the budget either. So while we might be at budget right now, we could trend lower but it's something that we have to watch like all the time.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone online? No. David, did you have any comments? Okay. Any more comments from the board? Then let's make a motion. Richard?
Yeah, I move we accept the report as presented.
Excellent. Richard moves that we accept the financial report as presented. All select board members in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 4-0. Kim, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Item E. FY budget process after action review. Sounds fascinating, John.
Well, I hope so. Liz, it's an administrative best practice to do an after-action review of major efforts like the FY25 budget process and to identify areas where staff and the select board see the potential for improvement. This conversation will help inform the FY26 budget approach that we will start later this year. For the past year's budget, staff led not with a proposed budget, but instead with a public engagement effort held at the Brooks Memorial Library called a budget open house. Town departments shared information and ideas with participants, and several budget alternates stemmed from these discussions. We presented the budget more at a policy level with a base budget built around assumptions of continued service levels and then budget alternates for anything new. We employed online survey tools to help identify which of the many project ideas, whether initiated by the public or from municipal departments, should be incorporated into the annual operating or capital budget, or in the case of last fiscal year's process, as a special project under the ARPA funding or through the town's revolving loan fund. We also rolled out new financial software in the development of the FY25 budget, but it was not available until late in the process. So we've asked the question, what worked well and what needs improvement? The memo gets into this in detail, and I'm happy to address anything that the board would like to consider, but I really wanted to hear from you all what you liked about the budget process and what was a total flop and you don't want to do it again. We are suggesting for your consideration tonight that we continue with the following themes to emphasize in the FY26 budget approach, and those are things like public engagement early and often throughout the budget process, and specifically maybe we can be doing a little bit more about being more specific about what we're looking for from the public. Collaboration with the finance committee, making detailed budget projection data and all the assumptions around that available.
Let me interrupt you.
Yes, please.
We don't have that memo.
Oh, you don't have that memo?
It's I think in the previous
Is it?
section, yeah, it was misfiled in mine. There you go.
Oh,
Okay, very good.
sorry about that.
Now we can follow along.
Okay.
Continue.
Do you want me to start over?
No.
So on page 164 of that memo are, for your consideration, like what are the themes we should be emphasizing moving forward, and things like public engagement, collaboration, making the detailed budget projection data available to anyone who's interested at all different levels through the OpenGov software. Openness to consider budget alternate suggestions early in the process from the public. Really continuing to take a policy level approach tied hopefully more and more to services delivered. We'd like to get into, well, what is it costing us to deliver services around roads or around fire or around police and so forth throughout the budget. And then finally, working more and more on budget alignment with the goals of the select board and the goals of the town. We did have one specific request around the public engagement that we'd like you to consider tonight as well, which is kind of how you would like us to kick off the FY26 budget process. And we presented a number of options for that on page 165. They're generally variations around what we did last year, which we could do again, which is essentially option number 4 is what we did last year, where we had an event, a public engagement event. Then we put together a base budget with budget alternates and then brought it to the select board. Some of the other things that staff have discussed, ways to approach that, are option 1 is like having some sort of public engagement event where before we put together the budget at all, to try to understand what people are thinking about changes they might like to see in FY26, then developing a base budget and alternates, then having a second follow-up event once some numbers are out on the table so that people can see, well, oh, you think that to do that service it would cost this, or to cut back on this other service it would save that. Have that conversation at a second event, and then present it to the select board. So that's another option. Option 2 is one where we could develop the base budget, which is essentially continuation of services and what's that going to cost just in general escalation. Roll that out to the board, then do a public event, develop budget alternates, potential changes after that, and then come back to the board for your deliberations. And then finally, something where we just rolled out the whole thing, base budget and suggested alternates from municipal departments, have a public engagement event, and then bring it to the select board for your deliberation. There's also many other different ways to do it. Those were a few suggestions. We'd love to get your thoughts on that. We also would like to continue. We've been developing our skills around surveying tools. We'd like to incorporate those because we know not everybody can show up at a public engagement event. We've also talked about sort of different kinds of sort of road shows. We know that, it was suggested at a staff meeting that folks at the senior center, for example, aren't necessarily all online, but they're all at the senior center every day, and that could be a place where we could go talk about the budget with people there, or other ways to meet people kind of where they're at. So those are the types of things we've been thinking about. We'd love to get your thoughts on, what worked well last year, what didn't work well, and your thoughts on this sort of approach on public engagement and the general themes moving forward. So that's it.
Interesting. Comments? Thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think this is very interesting, and I think it's exactly what we should be talking about in preparing for the next round of budgeting. Of your various options of what we could do differently next time, I like option 1, which has the 2 events in it, sort of a starter event, which is kind of what we did last year. But to me, it didn't have a lot of traction in terms of actual decision making. It was a nice event, and people showed up, but I didn't get the sense that the input from that meeting had a significant impact on the budget decisions that we made later. At least I didn't feel that. I don't know how other people felt. And also I feel like I didn't have tremendous insight into the process by which the base budget and alternates get created. And I'm very interested in that, is, what goes on within the administration that would take information, whether it's from the event or otherwise, just in general. How do you guys put together what you then bring to the select board? I heard a little bit about that when we did the department head interviews, Ian and I did, about, how that process had happened last year. There'd been some expectation that OpenGov would be further along, and that had an effect on how budgets got created within departments and stuff like that. So that process is of real interest to me. I mean, it's not something for the select board to participate in, but I think it would be useful to, sort of just have a sense of what it is that leads the budget to us when we get it. So that's something I'd like to know more about personally. And I think that's the most of it. I think it'll be interesting to see what OpenGov does for us. There was some discussion last year about how much line item information to present as part of the budget process, and we ended up, doing a lot of that. My understanding is that with OpenGov, that'll sort of happen automatically. That it's all that information is there for people to look at, and I don't know how we'll do that. Do you log on and see something on your computer, or just what the mechanics of that are? But I think making that level of detail available to those who want to see it is important, and we should continue to do that. So those are my somewhat disorganized thoughts.
Richard, do you have any comments?
Yeah, well, I have a question. Now, these options or any other options, will it be ultimately the select board that decides what the plan is? Well, I'm just wondering if, seeing how it's the budget and all the departments are going to be affected by this, we're having a retreat, would it be worth presenting the options to the department heads and getting their input about which one of these options makes sense to them? I don't know if that's overkill or it's creating too many decision-making things, but I'm just wondering about that.
Go ahead.
So we've discussed all these options as a team, the department heads, and we're really comfortable with any one of these. It's really more what the board is interested in seeing, it like what you think to inform your decision-making. How do you want to hear from the public?
Okay, well, that clarifies it for me.
Yep.
So, yeah, based on that, I think any option that provides a maximum amount of public input is the right one, and so that I would go with number one too, and because it does, you get a chance to check in with the public, you get to change it a little, and then check in. So, because it is a complicated process, and I think this provides more accountability between the board and the public.
Peter, do you have any comments? Having just seen that it was in our notebooks, after all.
No, I read it this morning. I just couldn't find it in the notebook. Again, I think all of these options are good options. It's sort of like a more streamlined event when we're approaching these things that involve kind of an idea of the direction, like our department heads decide that this thing sort of needs to go, and then involving the public for input. So I'm kind of a fan of option 3.
Great. So my concern is that what I liked the most about the budget last year was when we said to the town manager, go back to the staff and cut this as much as you can. Like, what I'm interested in is that whittling down process from what the town department heads would suggest and what you're suggesting to the select board, and then what ultimately is deemed essential. And I would like that process to happen within the town departments, and that the town manager brings to us what he considers essential, rather than some sort of wish list. Because really what we want for the taxpayers is only spending what we have to spend. And we have to justify that. So, we can have public input, but the bottom line rests with us as to what we think is essential. So, we can get input from the public all we want, but that process that happens within town, within your purview, within town staff, is the critical one, because that's what determines, what you think is important and worth defending, and bringing that to the select board.
Agreed.
Yes, Hans.
Peter mentioned option 3 is what he would like, and I have to say option 3 would also be highly acceptable to me, because I think introducing the budget and alternates before we hear public comment is really a powerful way to attract attention and to help people structure their own thinking. So that, in option 1, that is preceded by an event which I would think of as a more general discussion, but it would be the second event that would really deliver the goods in terms of public opinion on the reality of the choices before us. Option 3, would eliminate the first event, but then would be the same as option 1. But what's really, I think, is important is that the base budget and alternates come before an event, and that comes before the select board. So I agree that option 3 is also perfectly acceptable.
And just to be clear, it's not that I'm not looking for public participation. I'm just looking for public participation that is kind of already reduced to a place where our department heads can manage it. And, and there's always room for oversight and taking a look and changing things. But if we present something that is, we know that we can manage as a town, and then something else is introduced that, would give us some thought, something to think about, I think that would be a good time to take a crack. And to sort of second what Franz says, I think it also will engage a lot more people.
Thank you. Is there comment from the public?
Okay. David Levenbach, District 9. I'm also a member of the Finance Committee, but I'm speaking solely for myself. We addressed the question of public engagement in our report to RTM this past March, and recommend that you look at pages 4 and 5 of that report. A couple of specific points. The open house was, I think, a nice effort to begin public engagement. As Mr. Potter acknowledges, the numbers were not tremendous. We didn't, violate occupancy laws at the library. And it's hard to say, but I'm not so sure how representative of town residents turnout was. So there are some limits there. I would not at all discourage you from doing it again, but there are limits to that form of public engagement. There were 2 surveys done, and as we made a point in the report, those are unsystematic surveys. They do provide information, but they need to be understood in terms of their limitations. In terms of how representative, again, they are of residents' opinions. There's also the problem, which is basic to all surveys, that input is constrained by the design of the questionnaire. And so that needs to be taken carefully into consideration. There's also a feeling that it's important with such an online survey to make clear what the goal of fielding the survey is and how the data will be used. And finally, and this is probably going more toward option one, we in fact recommended 2 public hearings, one before administration brings forth its budget plan, draft plan, and that's really taking the temper of the room to know what the feelings are of town residents, and then another one after that draft plan is out, but before the select board begins its decisions about what to add, what to cut. I have a couple of other specific sort of housekeeping suggestions about that. We want to, I personally, and I think the committee was guided by this, to prioritize, to privilege public participation. So what I would suggest is that it be both of these public hearings be available both in person but also by Zoom. I would like to see members of the select board off the top table, and that they might listen to citizens and residents as members of an audience, either virtually or in person, and that the session would be led by some moderator, not from the administration, not from the select board, and that people would be asked to speak very briefly to identify their municipal concerns and their budget priorities, and then to take a minute to articulate the reasoning behind that and to get the issues out there on the table. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Kate, you have a comment?
Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. As a member of the public, I found this budget process very unsatisfying. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm just, as me, a member of the public. First of all, this is not going to come to it as a surprise. We have to see the line-by-line department budget. That is the budget, not the base budget with everything mashed together. And I know we have OpenGov. That's not enough. It needs to be printed off or separate so everybody can see it, and we're all working off the same budget. It drove me, as you know, it drove me crazy. We didn't know what was in the budget until we got the base budget numbers. None of us had a clue about the department head increases until we got that base budget. And the way it was explained to me why we didn't need the line by line, and then finally, like, we got it, was that everything was just rolled over from FY24 was just rolled over to FY25. That's not how you make a budget. You know, you need to look at the budget and decide, do we need to do everything that we did in FY24 to FY25? So it's really important that that line-by-line department budget, which we've all gotten for 185 years in this town, that's the budget you work on. I would also hope that you would start the process earlier. The night that you folks voted on the budget, Franz was still asking questions about the budget. And the night you vote on it, you should have it all wrapped up with a little bow on it, and you're looking at it for the last final time. I think some of us probably drive you guys crazy because we come to all the meetings, we read every single thing that is presented in the select board packets. I think the public, there's different levels of, you said, participation. But I don't think the public should be underestimated in our ability to understand the budget and what you're talking about. Part of the problem was there are 3 or 4 meetings that you talked about the budget on, and every member of the public got 3 minutes. I had a gigantic list, wouldn't surprise you, of things that I wanted to ask questions about, but I didn't have the opportunity to do so. And it's great to do an event at the library. I actually think that you should do it regardless whether it's the budget or not, so that the members of the public can meet the department heads and the departments. That is not public engagement on the budget as the way I see it. And I want to come to a meeting and talk and hear from the select board and give my opinion to the select board, since it's the select board that's ultimately going to make the decision on the budget. Going to the library and talking to a department head and saying, hey, I want this in the budget, I don't know if it's going to get translated to you folks. So I think there needs to be actual, real, more time when the public can talk to the board about this, because you are the ones that are actually going to make the decision. And, that's really important to me. And I know you need to meet people from where they're coming from. But some of us actually understand how the budget works and have opinions about it, have questions about it. So I hope you can, when you think of public engagement, it's not just some event where you set up a table and there's brochures. You know what I mean? Like, give the public actual opportunity to ask you folks questions. And I think there needs to be 100% transparency with where this budget, when you develop it, what it is, and don't underestimate our ability to understand it. And I think that was my frustration. There wasn't enough time. We weren't given enough information, and I'm going to beat it about getting that line by line department head budget in writing as the budget that you folks work off of, not this base budget thing. So I would just hope you take that into consideration. I know I'm all wound up about it, but I think it can be done better for the benefit of the whole town.
Thank you, Kate. Is there anyone online, Patrick?
Nope.
All right. Oh, Oscar? Second bite of the apple?
Yes. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Oscar Heller, Brattleboro. I've been also on the Finance Committee, so we've been talking about this. I've been thinking about it sort of specifically from an RTM perspective, because we are an RTM committee, and I think all of the inclinations towards more public participation are good. I like the idea. Basically, I think it feels like there are some guardrails on the process, and that needs to be loosened up a bit, because I think there's a real problem right now where people, right or wrong, and I would say on most sides of most issues, particularly RTM reps, the more involved, politically engaged people, there is sort of a building frustration about lack of something, access, input. I think it comes to a head at town meetings because we get into this very special situation where people may have strong thoughts on the budget, but it's kind of done, and the only tools we have available at that point are very clumsy and big and advisory. And then the standard advice that the select board gives and that I have given to people in years before is, well, if you really want to be involved with the budget, you need to go to the select board meetings, which is where the sausage is made, et cetera. The problem is, like Kate was saying, you are not really ever going to have a dialogue at a select board meeting. You are going to get up, you're going to say your 2 minutes. It may be in a row, 5 people each saying their piece in a row, and then at the end the board talks amongst themselves. It feels like a very limited process, which I think in people's current states of mind is extra frustrating. People just want an opportunity to say, I don't understand this decision, whatever it is, I'm really annoyed with it. I want to have some sense of back and forth. So if you can find a way in the process to have looser events that allow actual back and forth with the board, I think that would help everybody and sort of ease a lot of tension. And the only other thing I would say is that I think you do want to get beyond the people who come to meetings and the people who go to, and RTM reps and the people who are really involved. And I think you have to, if you urgently feel like you want that input, like I think we do, you really have to entice people. You can't just make things available. You have to make it interesting, and then maybe you'll draw people into the process. So I would say, it's not my time I'm volunteering, but instead of doing one event, book 5 nights in a row at the library. One select board member goes to each of the nights and a couple town staff, and you're just there to listen and try to get people to open up about what's really on their mind, and someone's taking notes and you're forming a record. Something like that, I think, would be more valuable than an event that's designed to be informative. So something like that, I think we would all really like to see, and I think could be really helpful.
Thank you, Oscar. All right. Did you want to say something, Richard?
Yeah, just listening to the comments, I get the impression that what people are looking for is something akin to a town meeting, but only focused. Because if you don't want, maybe you'd rather have a moderator instead of the select board running the show, basically. So, I wonder if it's something we should explore. I'm just throwing it out, but I'm just trying to respond to what I'm hearing is that it wouldn't be the representative. It would be it's sort of a real town meeting in an unofficial way. And perhaps people would have the ability to have some kind of draft of a budget beforehand and then have a completely open dialogue. It could be a circus, too. It could get crazy and wild, but maybe that's what we need to deal with the budget, is to just get it out there and everybody says what they want.
I have read those. I'm happy.
Okay, so I'm sure that John has enough information from tonight's discussion. And there's no motion for that, so there's only one more motion for this evening. Franz?
I think I know what that motion is.
Well, you just go right ahead.
Liz, I would like to move that the meeting be adjourned.
Thank you. Franz has moved that the meeting be adjourned. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
There you go. Thank you all very much.
Don't leave.